Sup, Amicus? I'm Leon, the Paperback Maniac, coming at you today with something a little different. Today I thought I'd share my thoughts on some newer horror books that I have read over the last few weeks. Lately I felt the urge to bust out the old Kindle. I've got a Kindle Paperwhite here, which I love, by the way, and I would highly recommend, for people, especially for me, I read newer books on the Kindle. I can't have the space, to like collect newer books. But any new thing that strikes my fancy or that I think sounds cool, I'll just buy it and queue it up on the Kindle. And I've had actually over the last couple of years, I've had books steadily accumulating on there. And I thought I wanted to kind of catch up lately. I just felt the urge. I need to take a little break from the vintage horror. Don't get me wrong, I love that stuff, and that's definitely my favorite thing to read. But just switch it up a little bit. There was a time when I would alternate between, the Kindle and newer books and then the older books. And, ever since starting this channel, that kind of stopped because, I don't know, I just felt pressure to just always, be reading as much vintage horror as I could so that I could produce content. And I just figured, fuck that. I'm just going to, if I want to take a break, if I want to read something else, I'm going to read something else, right? And this video is kind of a little experiment to see, if you guys are interested in hearing my thoughts about when I do read the newer books. They will not be full-blown reviews. They will not be spoilery. They'll just be kind of like my general thoughts. I want to try to keep this video brief despite this long-winded opening. So, all right. So the first book that I wanted to just kind of talk about today is Dead Sea Chronicles by Tim Curran. Dude, I'm not going to lie. It is kind of nice to not have to hold the book up the entire video. Now I see what the professionals get to experience. But anyway, Dead Sea Chronicles by Tim Curran. This book was published by Bloodshot Books in 2019, so it's fairly recent. I will go ahead and read the synopsis from the back cover, which I wrote down here. Come back to a mist-shrouded realm of horrors outside our own world. Come back to a place where rotting hulks drift on brackish tides, and the nightmares of wayward travelers come to hideous life. Come back to a rancid ocean choked with a tangled maze of moldering vegetation and the decomposing carcasses of those who died screaming for rescue. Come back to a world where predators soar through noxious clouds, aquatic leviathans lurk in the currents below, and the souls of lost sailors suffer an infinite torment on their final voyages. Dead men may tell no tales, but the Dead Sea does. Yes, so this book, Dead Sea Chronicles, is a sequel of sorts to Tim Curran's novel Dead Sea, which I think he published in 2007 or sometime around then. That was actually the first book of his I read. 5 or 6 years ago. I was still living in Korea, I remember. And I've been a fan of his ever since. This book that I'm talking about today, Dead Sea Chronicles, is a sequel of sorts to Dead Sea. It's actually 2 novellas that take place in this world of the Dead Sea, which is sort of like a take on the Sargasso Sea of myth, or otherwise known as Devil's Triangle, he refers to it. And and I was actually really stoked when I saw that he was kind of releasing a sequel to Dead Sea, because I really enjoyed Dead Sea when I read it back in the day, and it did make me a fan. And one thing I have to say, the reason that I do like Tim Curran, there are certain things that he really, really excels at. There are certain areas where he's not as successful always, but the areas where he is strong are definitely in his atmosphere and in his absolutely, at times, gorgeous, poetic descriptions of monsters and gore and just crazy set pieces. The dude really has an ear for just prose. It just sounds really good. And in fact, he's one of those few writers who, when you read it, like you almost want to read it aloud. Like it's just so, like the language is so rhythmic and euphonious. It flows. It's not tone deaf like a lot of writers, sadly a lot of horror writers seem to be sometimes, where like, you know, it just like is awkward, like the sentences are cumbersome and the words don't really flow together. Tim Curran is not that way. You know, when he is excited to be describing something, namely, like I said, when he's talking about gore or setting the scene, the descriptive writing is just really, really on point. And in a second, I'll read you guys a random passage just to kind of show you that. But yes, Tim Curran excels. He creates just this amazing atmosphere in Dead Sea Chronicles. That is certainly the case. It's just he just creates this nightmarish sort of like alternate reality, almost this other dimension where there's just like fog everywhere and just hideous creatures lurking in the fog, and we get ghost ships and we get just awful Lovecraftian slimy monsters in the on the ship and in the fog and coming out of the water, and it is just really, really delightful. So if you are just a language person, like if you love to read, like especially if you like older horror, like if you like to read you know, like guys like traditional like kind of pulp writers who I think definitely reveled more in the language than modern pulp writers do, then you may really enjoy Tim Curran. I know a lot of people can't, you know, get with some of they may like think that he's being prolix or being wordy, or oh my god, how many adjectives do we need to describe, you know, that carcass or whatever. And I get that, and occasionally Curran can be a little repetitive, and then there are, you know, like I said, he's not a perfect writer. He does sometimes, some of the stories are repetitive. It can sometimes be like you can seem like he's not really like plotting things out. He's definitely feels like a pantser in terms of like just flying by the seat of his pants and just like stringing along just one crazy set piece after another. It doesn't always cohere, but sometimes it does. And there are plenty of his books that I thought were just like, for me, like damn near perfect reads, but not always. But I think in this case, Dead Sea Chronicles, because they're shorter, you know, they're novellas, I think that it's kind of like a good sort of vehicle for him to really sort of demonstrate like the things that he does particularly well. So to give you guys a little taste of the sort of like atmosphere and the prose style, the very sort of descriptive prose style, I'm going to read a passage here. I'll just read like a few, 2 or 3 paragraphs to kind of just give you guys an idea of the sort of prose style. Check the Gremlins heat mug that my brother got me. By the way, guys, I'm not drinking tea or coffee. Hot lemon water. It's good for the immune system. So, okay, here we go. He saw the thing that haunted the ship. The thing that was Rhonda, Michael, Emily, and now Ava, and probably dozens of others in its ageless, undying existence. It was hunched over and translucent, like some mutant deep-sea shrimp, a nightmare quasi-crustacean with a plated thorax and a segmented tail. It hovered there above Marcus on jointed legs, swimmerettes wriggling from its underside along with what looked like clusters of pulsating pseudopodia. It held him down with a brace of spurred, chilliped-like limbs that terminated in glistening black hooks which looked sharp enough to disembowel a hog in a single strike. Its segments and plates fluttered, its body making the most perfectly hideous snapping and clicking noises that sounded like a lobster being shelled. This is what Ethan saw when the light hit it, gleaming off it. Its entire form was weirdly transparent yet cloudy like clear silicone caulk, moving and shivering and shuddering, sometimes blurring as if it was made out of some ethereal ectoplasmic material. So that should give you guys an idea. Very, very descriptive. I mean, he goes on and on. That's clearly where he's like the most excited, when he's like describing monsters, describing gory, crazy set pieces and scenarios. And I know that's not for everyone. I know that there are some people who like more of the laconic, like get to the point type stuff. But for my taste, I really enjoy it. I mean, it's just like on a sentence by sentence level. Like every page, he's got some shit like that. Just like some insane, very visual, really cool like words, like really like great diction and stuff. And yeah, it's definitely enough to make up for some of those flaws, like sometimes the lack of structure, or sometimes like the dialogue can be a little childish. But yeah, check it out. I think Dead Sea Chronicles would be a great place to start with him. So yeah, check it out. If you're a fan of Tim Curran, let me know. All right, the next book that we're going to be talking about today is another kind of newer book. It is The Forgotten Island by David Sodergren. And this book was independently published. It's a self-published book in 2018. And this is one that I had really heard nothing but good things about. I mean, it's got like just like an insanely high score, like on Amazon and Goodreads. And I just heard all this stuff about how it was like this perfect throwback to old school horror, and it sounded kind of cool. I knew it was set in Thailand. And I, I'd been to Thailand. It's traveled around Southeast Asia, so I thought, yeah, hell yeah, I'll check that out. So let me read to you guys just in terms of the plot. I'm just going to read the back cover synopsis. When Anna Logan agrees to go on a holiday to Thailand with her estranged sister Rachel, she hopes it will be a way for them to reconnect after years of drifting apart. But now, stranded on a seemingly deserted island paradise with no radio and no food, reconciliation becomes a desperate fight for survival. For when night falls on the Forgotten Island, the dark secrets of the jungle reveal themselves. Something is watching them from the trees. Something ancient. Something evil. So, yeah, this book... basically, like in a nutshell, like all of the hype surrounding it, I think was like totally warranted. This book, I think this guy David Sodergren like knocked it out of the park with this one. It didn't feel like a first novel. It felt a lot more confident and assured, as opposed to Tim Curran, who sometimes, like I said, the plots can be a little wobbly and the structure is not there. This thing was tight in terms of structure, and it is very apparent that David Sodergren is well versed in the 3-act structure. It's like you could just like clearly like see like the it was very like a tight structure. And really well put together, and the characters here I thought were really well developed. You definitely established the characters and made you care for them, so that when they go through the shit, and they do go through some shit, it's a little the stakes are high, and you really are pulling for these people. And yeah, I thought that this was a great quote unquote throwback, if you want to throw that word out there. I thought did a really good job. The story was compelling. I just I kept reading it, and it definitely goes to some fun places, and it definitely gets pretty Lovecraftian as well. This one and Dead Sea Chronicles are pretty Lovecraftian, but this one, the final creature, which I won't ruin, but I thought it was a really cool final creature. Very kind of just memorable, and just like the image of the creature definitely was vivid in my mind. And just like the whole scenario that Sodergren paints here, I thought was gripping and engaging. And I would recommend anyone who enjoys the vintage horror that I discuss on this channel, to check out this dude. And I'm definitely excited to read his other books. I've got Night Shoot, which is a slasher, and he just came out with a modern day giallo called Dead Girl Blues, I think. I already picked it up on the Kindle. It's queued up. Looking forward to checking out more, because dude's definitely a talented writer, and yeah, definitely feels much more confident and assured than most first-time novelists. And I'm surprised that it's independently published, actually. I don't know if that was just maybe a personal choice of his, but I mean, that book was good enough, I think, definitely to be published by, if not a mainstream publisher. I know it's rare for those to publish horror these days, but I mean, certainly an independent publisher, I'm sure, would pick him up, and maybe down the road he will publish in more traditional ways. But yeah, anyway, good book. Definitely recommend it. All right, and the third and final book I want to talk about today is The Haunted Halls by Glenn Rolfe. And this book was published, I think, first by James Ward Kirk Publishing in 2014. And I'll go ahead and read the back cover synopsis for that one. The Bruton Inn, located outside of the small Maine city of Hollis Oaks, is home to something special. An icy presence has made its way from a dark past to the present day. Cold spots, shadows, and whispers permeate the halls, and guests are beginning to change. For two front desk employees, Rhiannon and Jeff, the dark rumors are about to come to light. They call upon Lee Boole, the urban shaman, and his connection with the spirit world to dig up the truth. Will they be able to stand against this malevolent force? Or will they come face to face with something beyond even your most frightful dreams? Welcome to the Bruton Inn. The Ice Queen has arrived. All right, so this is another book which I had heard about, over the years. And from some people who I really respect, who were like recommending, in particular, this one, which I believe is Glenn Rolfe's first published novel, and you can tell it definitely it feels more like a first published novel than, say, The Forgotten Island. And I had heard that it was kind of like an in-your-face horror novel, which is partly what prompted me to check it out. That and the premise sounding cool, and yeah. Those people were right. This is an in-your-face horror novel. I was actually a little surprised. This one definitely is, I would say, like, and I mean this in full, like not in any sort of, like negative way, but this is probably the trashiest novel of the three that I'm discussing today. Definitely feels more like, think like zebra horror, if that's your bag. Definitely leans into the sex. There's a lot of like sex and horror, that conflation, which I talk about a lot. It kind of in that way kind of almost reminds me of like R. Patrick Gates's stuff. And it is pretty kind of at times nasty, in your face supernatural horror, which, as you guys know, is my jam. And you can tell that this guy, Glenn Rolfe, like Tim Curran and David Sodergren, is just a massive horror fan. I mean, he's one of us, right? I mean, he's got characters named Lee and Layman. I mean, it is a little on the nose, but that's okay. And, you can just tell that he was just kind of just trying to make this one, his first book, just as, throw it all in there and make it as crazy as possible. And it does have a little bit of that sort of just like with Tim Curran, just like, let's just try to amp it up every chapter, and just can seem like a sequence of just like one crazy ass thing after another. But I would be lying if I said that this book was not very, very entertaining. I greatly enjoyed it, and I blasted through it like pretty fast. That's another interesting thing, and another reason I like to read books on my Kindle. I seem to read them a lot faster than I do the paperback horror novels, probably because I'm not fucking taking a shit ton of notes as I'm reading the paperback horror novels for the review. I don't do that with these, clearly. But this book, Haunted Halls, was very, very, very fast paced, very fun. There are a lot of characters, and at first you don't really know who's the actual protagonist. Like it's not made very clear. Some of the characters did kind of jumble up in my mind. I had a difficulty at first kind of keeping track of everyone, and also just keeping track of what's going on, because like I said, it's like so many things like start happening. Like this is not a slow, quiet horror novel, let's say. But it was really fun, and I really dug this villain, the Ice Queen, this girl who's this entity, you could say, who's haunting the swimming pool of this hotel. and I thought she was really cool. And I only wish, my only gripe really with her is that I feel like her Ice Queen like powers, like she can like freeze, like make shit turn to frost and freeze things. I feel like it wasn't like fully exploited to its fullest. I think at some points like you kind of forgot that she was actually the Ice Queen and could do that. Like I would have loved to like really have him lean more into that. But like the prologue, I think, or the first chapter, the opening image of the book where we first are introduced to the Ice Queen is just fucking awesome. And when I read that, I was like, yes, this is like the type of shit that I want to be like reading right now. And it was fun. And yeah, he does maintain that same degree of craziness, but you know, maybe not as much like with the Ice Queen stuff. That kind of like goes by the wayside. And I would have also liked to like learn how this bitch even became the Ice Queen, because we never really like figure out like, well, how does she even have these powers to begin with? But you know, whatever. These kinds of books are not written to be perfect. You cannot expect perfection. The way I always appraise horror is if a book or a movie or whatever has enough of the good stuff, if it gives me enough enjoyment and entertainment value on, you know, like a page by page basis, then I feel like it was worth its while and, you know, worth recommending to others. So I would recommend The Haunted Halls as well. Not perfect, you know, really none of these books are like absolutely perfect, but they're all fun. And if you're looking for something, you know, a little newer, you could do a whole lot worse, I think, than The Haunted Halls or any of the three books here today. So, yeah, I think that's going to do it, guys. That is the video. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them. And also, you know, if you have any recommendations for kind of newer post-2000 horror, let me know. I have a shit ton of books on my Kindle, which I've just like accumulated over like the last couple of years, and I want to continue doing this. You know, I want to knock out a few more of these, and I will of course get back to the vintage horror too, and expect more reviews of that. But I think I might do another sequence of reading some of these. So yeah, if there's any good newer horror books, make some recommendations. Let's get a thread going. You know what I like. You know that I'm a fan of just like over the top, crazy, supernatural, fast paced, but yet also well written and descriptive horror. So yeah, let me know. And I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe. I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.